Okay, so let's talk about how you keep your fourth finger round as opposed to letting it collapse. And I am struggling with this myself, and so when I thought about making this video, probably what I'll end up doing is asking for your help. But we'll see how far I can get. So, I watched one of Professor V's videos. He's a very good violin teacher. If you haven't gone by his site, Professor V, all one word. And I saw that he was teaching about putting your fingers down in whole step and half step increments to get your intonation correct. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. First finger, second finger, third finger, fourth finger. Now, your hand is positioned in a way that is driven by your elbow. So if my elbow is over here underneath my violin, directly underneath my violin, then when I put my fingers down, okay, then it ends up coming out at about this angle. Now if I were to bring my elbow under a little bit, now they're starting to get a little bit rounder. So a lot of your hand position, at least for me, a lot of my hand position is determined by where my elbow is underneath my violin. So when I get to the G string, I bring my elbow underneath so that it's actually coming out, if you can see from a horizontal perspective, it's coming out underneath the violin so that I can reach some of those really hard and vibrato. If I want to get some vibrato, as you can see here, my elbow has extended itself this far out in order for me to get enough, let's see, freedom of motion, I guess is what we'll call it, so that I can wiggle my finger back and forth freely so that it comes out. Okay, rather than fight the physical impediments that are inherent in this position, which if you keep your elbow underneath the violin, then what happens is you start tensing your finger because there is no freedom of motion here. If you bring your elbow underneath, that frees up your hand to wiggle back and forth more freely than if I were to stay here. Okay? So this is a little bit harder to get it to move, whereas here it moves a lot freer. So now let's talk about that fourth finger. So when you are going for the fourth finger, be aware of where your elbow is underneath your violin. So if you don't bring it under enough, then your finger, obviously because your hand is, when you bring your elbow to the right, your hand tilts this way. So it starts tilting like this. When you bring it back to the left, it tilts back. So if you think about it, as far as distance is concerned, if my elbow is on the left side of my violin and I try to reach for the pinky, well, he's going to miss. He's going to go for something and hit complete air. If I start to bring it over, then he starts to hit it, but when I hit down, you either come out like this, something that is totally not good, because if your first knuckle is collapsed, then you can't do anything. You're stuck. The vibrato action relies on that first knuckle collapsing. It's this action here. So if your finger's already collapsed inside out, then you're pretty much doomed as far as vibrato is concerned. So you need to bring your elbow from the left over to the right just enough that your pinky can then round itself out. And then when you're vibratoing, your pinky needs to also be able to collapse its first knuckle. Okay. I have a sister who she's very double jointed, and so her pinky comes out oftentimes like, and I can't even do it unless I push it down, but it comes out like this. Can you see that? Where just the first knuckle is collapsed and the second knuckle is not. I think I can do it in other fingers. Yeah, like this. Only on her pinky. So her pinky ends up looking like this. So vibratoing with a double jointed person, I guess, is a lot harder to do, because without your second knuckle being collapsed, your first knuckle has a lot harder time getting collapsed. So I guess the lesson that I want you to get out of this video is that your elbow can help your hand position to get into the right position so that your pinky can be round. So, and I'm also encouraging you to originate this motion from your elbow and not from your hand. If you just originate from your hand, you're going to twist your wrist in an unnatural way, and so your arm and your hand will be in disagreement, and then your wrist is the one that takes the brunt of that. And then you'll get really, really sore right here. So instead of trying to just twist your hand to get your finger to be round, I would suggest bringing your elbow to the right until your hand rotates and your pinky ends up in a position where it can be round. Okay, so it probably won't be this far over on the E string, because the E string is on the right side of the violin, and so you want your hand to be over here. Whereas if you're going to go for the G string, you're going to want to bring it over pretty far in order for your pinky to reach over here, because your hand is turning far enough for it to go over there. So give that a shot.